and I will be reading from my memoir essay entitled Unraveled, A Family History. I unravel myself in the kitchen, over a well-seasoned cast iron skillet. Allow the parts of me that are tender to cook down in a broth. I'm cool as the underside of the pillow. I don't know how not to be. I do know how to stuff down my pain with a knife and a fork. I know how to fry it in butter until it's golden brown, how to saute it with onions and garlic, how to plate it, serve it, garnish it so it looks more like feast than famine. I know how to make not okay taste like Christmas dinner. The year that my grandmother was diagnosed as diabetic and didn't want to ruin the holidays for us. I know how to make it a bonding moment. Like when both of my parents were diagnosed within a year, I know how to loop not okay around a fork and make it so damn delectable. My insulin dependent husband goes back for seconds and sometimes thirds. I unravel myself over plates. And while I don't remember what joke I told to get out of the trust exercise at the church when I was in the 5th grade, I know my efforts got me an extra bag of Cheetos and the relief that comes from not having to fall into the arms of a stranger when you already know at 9 years old that you can't trust arms to hold you. I know how to make the candy that the medicine hides in, although I'm not a pharmacy nor an apothecary, more chocolate factory. Never let them see you cry, even if you have to hide behind a building, my grandmother would tell us. Never let them see you sweat. I learned words from my grandma. She gave me poems, taught me how to rinse collard greens to make sure they're clean. She was an activist, a survivor, a car accident survivor that left her disabled and made my grandfather slam the door shut on their relationship. When my father slammed the same door in my mother's face at the beginning of a childhood when doctors questioned my ability to thrive, questioned if I would ever graduate high school, I knew how to pull strength from the bottom of a bag of potato chips in a hospital gift shop. When the answer to the nagging pain in my spine was psoriatic arthritis and ankylosing spondylitis, I knew exactly where I wanted to stop for dinner. Do you get it now? I know how to be anything but not fine. Even when depression makes me too heavy to climb out of my bed, I make a spool of thread out of myself in front of my husband's eyes, create a patchwork table setting out of my insides because vulnerability isn't a trait afforded to Black women, not where I come from. I went to the school of push through when the line formed to pick our poisons, to pack up problematic coping mechanisms. I went into the family business. Sex is cool, but have you had my mac and cheese? Have you ever glued yourself together with cake frosting, with or without the cake? See, we all have to have pain, but not everyone can cook it into pans, cut it into pieces, and make themselves both dessert and disaster. Thank you.
Damn. Did you just say not everyone can make themselves into both dessert and disaster? Damn. Damn. Give it up, y'all, for Porscha Simmons, for bringing that poetry, that vulnerability, just that beautiful cadence. Again, let's snap it up. Porscha Simmons. Thanks so much, Porscha. Next on the mic, we have Omayma Khayat. Omayma Khayat holds a degree in visual communications and was working as a full-time project manager in the printing and installation industry with over 15 years experience until the recent pandemic caused things to shift. Now she spends time writing, reading, and helping to homeschool her youngest son. Y'all, do me a favor and snap it up for Omayma Khayat.
Hi everyone, my name is Omayma, and I'll be reading from my memoir essay, Uncovering Identity, My Choice to Wear the Hijab. We weren't everyday Muslims. You couldn't even consider us Friday Muslims. We were assimilated Americans who called ourselves Muslims. I grew up in Patterson and Clifton, New Jersey, in Palestinian and Turkish Sunni Muslim dominated neighborhoods, where almost all were related in one way or another. My family were outcasts because to our neighbors, we were a sect of fake Muslims. We were Lebanese and Shia. Physically, we looked like everyone else. Our Middle Eastern attributes were prominent, but it didn't matter that we looked like Arabs. The rivalry between Sunni and Shia Muslims had existed since the 7th century. My siblings and I endured questions and looks confusing us and having us question our identities. As a child, I had little exposure to what it meant to be Arab or Muslim. To be fair, I saw my mother perform her daily prayers, all 5 of them each day. I knew that despite how exhausted she was up every morning before dawn to perform Fajr prayers, donned in an all-white prayer outfit, kneeling on a red prayer mat, offering prayers and dua. I also watched her fast during Ramadan, sunrise to sunset, despite her 60-plus hour work weeks. Even though my mother prayed and fasted, she refused to cover her hair, and it was not something that was ever discussed with us girls either. I attended Patterson Catholic High School. Back then, I was into heavy metal music, tight clothing, going through phases of New Kids on the Block, Bryan Adams, goth, and then heavy metal. I was into hanging posters on my wall, covering every inch, and writing poetry. There was nothing religious about me. In the mornings, on my way to the school bus, I hiked my burgundy plaid skirt up, rolling it until it reached mid-thigh. Then I applied a dark brown lip liner, careful to outline just the outside of my lips before applying a darker shade inside. After school, I unrolled my skirt and wiped away any evidence of my rebellion. In the fall of 1997, I headed to college. I carried with me a desire to author this new chapter of my life with my own notions, conceptions, and ideologies. There, I began my search for identity. Having attended a predominantly Black school and lived in a community that didn't think I fit in, I set out in search for organizations to join. I eventually found the Muslim Students Association. After spending my first college semester learning about the religion I was born into, the following spring, I registered for Muslim Women 20th Century Literature. The professor was a Muslim woman of Pakistani descent. She instructed that the hijab was an oppressive notion. Towards the end of the semester, I woke up and searched my closet for the most loose-fitting garments to wear. Sandwiched between many tight pants and cleavage-bearing shirts, I found the long-sleeved white shirt and the only pair of baggy jeans I owned. Rummaging through my drawer of unwanted stuff, I pulled out a wrinkled hijab. The disappointment etched across my professor's face smacked my senses. Before I could sit for the exam, she asked me to walk outside with her. She berated me for covering, telling me that I knew nothing of feminism. I stood in front of the woman I admired and respected, despite her having different views. Yet in that hallway, she humiliated me. After the final, I left the campus feeling defeated, but I was sure that I'd have a better response from my family. They were bound to support me. My parents, in the midst of having their lunch, seated in our mismatching colors and patterned kitchen, looked at me with confusion. Here again for the second time in one day, I was attacked. "What have you done?" my mother asked. "You need to take that off." Another voice, my father, was a bit gentler, and with a chuckle, he encouraged me with a, "Habibti, it's May, too hot, take it off and put it back on in December." I was being stared at as if I was a stranger. Two voices, both with different ideas and emotions, vying for the same outcome. In the midst of my newfound identity, I could see the rain clouds forming above my mother's head. The room darkened, and her devastation threatened like lightning. Thank you.
Let's give it up for Omayma Khayat. Thank you so much, Omayma, for reminding us the importance, how critical it is to maintain autonomy over our own identities, and for reminding us of how brave that is for us to do as BIPoC folks. Mad love. Again, give it up, Omayma Khayat. Next to take the stage, we have the exceptional Lara Cáceres, aka Elisabet Lara Marchant. Elisabet Lara Marchant writes about her lived experiences through lyrical prose with elements of magic realism because this is how she can best explain the realities of the world around her. She is currently working on her series of short form fiction that relays her lived experiences in her homelands as well as other lands. Y'all, give it up for Elisabet Lara Marchant, aka Lara Cáceres.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lara Cáceres, and I will be reading an excerpt from my memoir essay, This is Americas. I like to believe that it's the beginning to the end of the more than 500-year-long plague of US capitalism and racism after the coronavirus crashes the economy and revolutionary uprisings for racial justice set fire throughout the country. George Floyd's life is stolen from him among the weeks and days and hours of the many other Black people murdered by the hands of white supremacy that lives at the fingertips of non-Black people of color too. Just 2 weeks after Breonna Taylor, just 3 weeks after Nina Pop, just 4 weeks after Ahmaud Arbery, and many more. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, many people face the hardship of becoming newly unemployed, though now many find themselves free to fight for Black liberation and against the capitalist state, this common root of oppressions that bind us all. But I am tied to my privileges of having employment during this time, as I nervously work and write in my family's small condo, home to 7 people on the outskirts of East LA. During the week, I am stuck and safe, working from home, feeling horrified, hopeful, and helpless all at the same time, behind my computer screen as I endlessly scroll, share, sign, and send. I want to be out in the revolution on the streets where I feel I should be as a young and able non-Black Latina. My heart swells at the thousands of people throughout the country taking the streets to protest for justice at the same time that my fear sinks in at the sight of state violence. I think of Chile, where I have seen this happening before, and I voice message my beloved friend Cristina, who I met while studying at university there. Oli amigui, ¿cómo estáis? La revuelta, the revolt, has arrived here too. I don't tell her about how scared I am though, for she has lived my fears of what might come next. After work, I watch the evening news my parents have on the TV, and I feel the heat rising in my chest as I see the bullshit media coverage on loop about violent protesters, rioters, and looters. La tele miente, the TV lies. The news praises the cops as keepers of the peace, though all week I watch videos online of them beating, gassing, and terrorizing the streets. I close my eyes and I see images of tanks and police and military, pacos, milicos, asesinos in Chile. I open them and see the same cops, military, and murders in the US. My heart fills with grief and my stomach knots in fear as my mind travels to histories of police state violence throughout the Americas, kidnappings, torture centers, and mass murders. This state terrorism I see happening here is the same I remember witnessing through my phone screen just months ago, happening in my homeland far away, a place with cotton candy sunsets and cold blood on the streets. I remember seeing Cristina's Instagram stories of her protesting in the metro station suddenly changing to those abacos going rogue on protesters with their coke-fueled fury and blind rage, expressed through the use of batons and guns. I remember my horror at seeing the milicos in their tanks using bullets, gas bombs, and pressurized water to impose martial law and toque de queda, nationwide curfew. I remember my heart aching and swelling at the millions of people, including Cristina, marching endlessly anyway. The images of people my age yelling out their names and their ID numbers as they are taken away by the police haunt my mind. They want me to remember them in case they too disappear, like the tens of thousands of people never heard from again during the last US-funded capitalist dictatorship in Chile. Perhaps my hysteria is informed by this history, helplessness, and hollow fear feeding my paranoia, telling me we can be next. On the weekend, I prepare to leave the house for the first time in 3 months to hit some protest with my partner. I wrap up my long, luscious hair and cover it with a hat, then later with a helmet, just in case, to protect my skull from being cracked open. Images of broken heads brandish my mind. I cover my face completely so that all people can see of me are my deep honey brown eyes, and I bring goggles to protect them, in case that they are shot out or sprayed with mace. With each blink, I picture bandaged eyes and emptied sockets. Perhaps I'm too exaggerative, but it seems like the cops picked up some tricks from the Pacos as they start to aim straight for the face of protesters to rid us of any notion of humanity. The words of the Chilean president about sending troops on civilian play in my mind. Estamos en guerra. We are at war, is what he said about the state against the country's own people. Thank you.
Thank you. Give it up for Lara Cáceres. Thank you so much for bringing us both the political and the personal. Mad love. Next up to the mic, y'all, we have Tanisha White. Tanisha White is a Black, queer lover of Inquisition, sex positivity, and community. You can find pieces of Tanisha's work in Pulp Mag, Black Youth Project, Gay RVA, and Urban Views Weekly. Let's give it up for the unparalleled Tanisha White.
Hey y'all, I'm Tanisha White, and I'll be reading an excerpt from my personal essay, Reclaiming the Soft B in Belly. It was fish stick day, and after lunch I stood by my cubby and looked down at my ever-present belly, now full of cafeteria oven-fried fish, covered by a colorful dress from the Gap. My eyes glanced toward the flat tummy of a boy classmate. His lean little body was covered by a white sweater with a high neck. I was unfamiliar with the comfort he seemed to feel in his fitted turtleneck. I stood near the pink winter jacket and matching boots that protected me from the harsh North Dakota winter, wishing it could protect me on the inside too. I felt warmth in my cheeks. My mind skipped to how unbelievably bored I was about to be during a lesson about telling time. I tried to hold in my stomach on the way back to class. I'm seeking grace for my soft belly and her annotation on the ways I've stretched and grown, for these thighs that have held me up, for these heavy hands, for checking the scale every day and masking the brewing tears with a long shower, for my hesitation in making plans to shop for clothes. Online shopping carts have given me the option to delete items in my cart within seconds. This will probably be too tight to fit in the midsection, click. I don't have enough hips for this to fit right anyway, click. No way this will look as good on me as it does on this plus size model, click. Summers during the early 2000s were snapping fresh green beans, mosquito bites, walking down a dirt road to see my auntie, fish fries and homemade hush puppies, Judge Judy, General Hospital, and Walker, Texas Ranger, dirt and sweat stained Rugrats t-shirts, and visiting my uncle's church. In the living room of my aunt's new custom-built house, the AC protected us from the harsh Central Florida heat. The Saturday evening, as I stood in the carpeted living room, the sweat beads came without an invitation. My mother had bought me white dress pants from her favorite store, high-waisted with a long zipper in the front, decorative buttons on either side. 20 minutes into trying them on, she was visibly frustrated. My stomach spilled over the pants. Her mouth curled down at the corners. Really, Tanisha? My cheeks hot, I hung my head. Warm tears brewed behind my eyes. My uncle, excited for this ever-moving sect of his family to be visiting, was present in this den-turned gallery. His kind eyes sensed my struggle and attempted to make eye contact. I looked away. The next morning, after the CD player gospel, stovetop grits and scrambled eggs, I washed my face with a line-dried washcloth. I pulled on the white dress pants. I sucked my stomach in to zip them up. I said nothing on the way to the car. Before he made his way to the pulpit, my uncle made a point to lean down and whisper, "You look very nice today." "Thank you," I managed to squeeze out. The tears had started to brew again, but like usual, I pushed them down, stopped being sensitive. I believed my body was something to be managed rather than something to be cared for. I can't remember a time when my body and I were on the same team. I watched pale, freckled hands only reach for one slice of pizza at the pool parties. I'd look at my round tummy hidden beneath a one-piece bathing suit and do the same, but my stomach growled, and then I was angry. I wonder if that ever went away. Stomach, gut, tank. Those were the names my mother allotted my midsection. belly and tummy were reserved for the dainty, those without stretch marks, outlines to hold them in. My mother would stop on her way out of the bathroom and look at herself in the mirror, hold her soft belly in her hands and squeeze it, over enunciating the hard T when she said, "Look at this tank," almost like she couldn't believe it herself. See, she isn't above reproach. For as long as I can remember, my mother was the most beautiful person I knew. If she wasn't happy with
I
her
haven't done
body,
that in a few months.
post 2 healthy children and 4 full decades of life, how could I be? I shouldn't be offended. I pretended not to be. I wonder if I ever stopped. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanisha. I'm so sorry that someone wasn't muted and disrupted you, but that was such a beautiful, courageous work of narrative nonfiction. Thank you for the details. Thank you for the craftsmanship, but most of all, thank you for pouring yourself onto the page. Mad love. Y'all, coming up to the proverbial mic, we have my friend, the transcendent LaTasha Sherell James. LaTasha is a storyteller who grew up in a shotgun house in a segregated section on Richmond, Virginia's North Side. When she's not around her way, LaTasha's booking a unique Airbnb stay in an unassuming town off a beaten path. Give it up for LaTasha Sherell James.
Hello, my name is LaTasha Sherell James, and I'll be reading an excerpt from my memoir essay titled "I Was Born with My Fists Balled Up." Ma gunned Aunt Lois's 73 green Gremlin from the south side of Richmond to the north side, searching for Benny. The engine heaved, causing the car to convulse. Ma's body was doing the same. Her hands and her nerves had been unsteady ever since she found out where Benny had been hiding. I cooed and gurgled from the back seat. Ma glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "TT, love you, my sweet baby girl, my sweet T," she said, blowing me kisses and making sure I hadn't rolled out of the car seat or suffocated under the green and ivory blanket I was swaddled in. Son of a bitch, she screamed at Benny and at life. The June sun seared everything it touched, including Ma. Beads of sweat dripped from her temple down to the crescents of her breasts. The smell of Ma's Avon Sweet Honesty, engine exhaust, and the simmering concrete were like passengers in the car. Ma pulled over on the shoulder of the boulevard bridge to manually crank down the windows. She inched from behind the steering wheel, scooted to the passenger side, and hopped out. She peered at me through the open window and then looked out over the James River. The river roared stories below her. She tossed a silent prayer into it and then promised herself she wouldn't cry until that night. Before this, Ma channeled pre-famed Whitney Houston, who would eventually become her favorite singer. Glowing brown skin and the girl next door, innocence that life hadn't yet taken away. She sported thrifted high-waisted denim, a striped cap sleeve blouse, and a scowl on her face. Son of a bitch was all she could say that day. At 2 months old, Ma didn't take me out often. If we took a drive, it was to halt my hollering at 2 a.m., which would wake up Aunt Lois and the neighbors who could hear me through those cheap apartment walls that were as thin as Ma's bank account. "That's a crying child there," they would say, referring to Ma's full name, Beverly. Ma would sing me soul ballads, Gladys Knight or Teddy Pendergrass, with lyrics that reflected her life at the time. But on this day, there were no soothing ballads. Instead, she kept cussing and affirming Willie James is my daddy, which really meant that she was a fighter, like my granddaddy was. Everybody who knew the James's clan knew not to fool with Willie James, because Willie James, as they would say, would cut a nigga, which meant his kids would too. But on this day, she didn't wield a knife. All she could wield was her strength. This was the summer of '81, the year of my birth. The year that Benny, my biological father, saw me for the first and last time, all in one visit. He had avoided Ma for months after their one night together. He was holed up in a dingy duplex in Holland Park where Ma was headed. She hopped back into the Gremlin and made her way to the north side. She steered the car in front of the duplex, gently scraping the hubcap on the curb. Empty wild Irish rose bottles, cigarette butts, a used needle, and receipts from the First Avenue corner store peeked through the knee-high grass. The windows were boarded up. The chain link fence sagged. Across the street and beside the corner store was the First Avenue laundromat. Next to the laundromat was a hole-in-the-wall tabernacle church, where the door never quite closed all the way, almost as if inviting those in the duplex to come over and repent. This is the scene passed down from my mother's memory to my own. This set the stage for how I would navigate in the world. I was born having to fight all these battles that I did not ask to fight. The battle of being a woman, the battle of being Black, the battle of being the daughter of a single mother. Thank you.
Now, please give it up for LaTasha, Sherell, James. I was born to fight a battle. Please forgive me, LaTasha, if I am not directly quoting you, but I was born to fight a battle that I did not decide to fight. What was the line? Unmute yourself, Tosh. What was that line?
I was born to fight a battle that I did not ask to fight.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for reminding us that we ain't asked to fight these battles, but we are fighting them because we are resilient. Thank you so much, LaTasha. Beautiful, beautiful work. Also, fam, I think I neglected, because I was so distracted by the unmuted person, I neglected to ask for everyone to give it up for Tanisha White. So please, can we do that again? Give it up for Tanisha White. Thank you. All right. Next up, we have the brilliant Krystal Jagoo. Krystal has taught at Nipissing University and worked as a wellness counselor and coordinator for the University of Toronto before transitioning into the role of an accessibility advisor. She has a complicated relationship with the concept of resilience, which is often weaponized against oppressed groups to maintain the problematic status quo. Krystal is about to bring us the real, so please join me in snapping it up for Krystal.
Hi, my name is Krystal Jagoo, and I will be reading from my personal essay, A Slow Death in Academia. It was unclear how much engagement was expected, but I had my reusable water bottle full to the brim, given how skilled I had become at shoving it in my mouth, a tactic necessary to maintain employment when faced with inappropriate statements. I forced myself to focus on the Zoom screen in front of me, as it changed from boxes with individual faces to the agenda, land acknowledgement, and bios of panelists, which included buzzwords like equity and cultural competence. In this way, I was introduced to a panel of folks from various East Asian backgrounds, including a psychiatrist, a lawyer, a physiotherapist, a medical student, and an endocrinologist. From the cognitive dissonance of these model minorities and their concomitant disbelief that they did not benefit from such assumptions, I knew to expect fuckery. As the East Asian panelists expressed frustration at the lack of solidarity from other racialized folks, they engaged in anti-Black erasure, thereby making it clear that their job titles bestowed enough credibility for their lack of insight to have any repercussions whatsoever. As is often the case in group interactions at my day job, disengaging from what passes for progress is an act of survival. In the academic industrial complex, disengaging helps to reduce the odds that my hypervigilance will identify every triggering syllable for rumination with frustration later. In doing so during this webinar, I will readily admit that I lack the exact details of the vitriol spouted when the medical student panelist experienced racism and xenophobia on a recent run. What I do know is that he sure as shit did not die then, or he would not have annoyed the fuck out of me in that mandatory work webinar, especially as this took place shortly after Ahmaud Arbery's murder by 2 white men while out running. My earlier snack gurgled in my stomach to hear another panelist's cognitively dissonant statement that covert racism hurts just as much. Multiple dead Black folks would disagree. Could they still speak, that is? I was seething by the time my computer screen was finally free of those infuriating model minority faces. It was my ethical responsibility to draw attention to the inherent anti-Blackness in that mandatory webinar. As I reviewed my notes in preparation for what fresh fuckery awaited me, I reminded myself that my relative privilege as a non-Black person of color who directly benefits from the work of Black folks in the civil rights movement demanded that I work hard to repay those debts. I waited until the departure of the director and assistant director from my Zoom screen, as my body now knew to be on guard with flight, fight, and freeze responses in their presence from their incessant targeting over the last year, although they probably continued to wish I would fawn instead. As I looked at this Zoom screen box with my model minority colleague, who had once expressed delight at my nickname of White Whisperer for her, I explained that as an equity office, we have a responsibility to confront anti-Blackness within the medical industrial complex. I shed light on the public health crisis, whereby Black life is disrupted at disproportionately higher rates, including discipline in schools, apprehensions by child welfare, and police brutality, which often results in loss of life, as if violently stolen labor for centuries was not enough. The research tells us that Black children are still not receiving much needed pain medication for appendicitis, and Black folks are dying at higher rates than their white peers in pregnancy. And those issues are directly related to such attitudes from these East Asian panelists. If they cannot acknowledge the humanity of Black folks enough to refrain from erasing their worst struggles when articulating adverse experiences during this pandemic that is disproportionately killing Black folks, how can they be trusted to recognize Black pain and respond appropriately when respectability politics is geared towards proximity to whiteness? Thank you.
Krystal, you better work. You better work. Everyone snap it up for Krystal, Kavito, Jagoo, because you brought us to church. You brought us to church. If that wasn't a word, I want to record that and disseminate it to everything and everyone involved in the, what did you say, the academic industrial complex? Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much, Krystal, for sharing that with us. And for the rage in your eyes. The people in your meeting. He would be like, oh, here Krystal come. Keep coming, Krystal, keep coming. Yes, keep coming. Don't be scared, because they scared. Keep coming. All right, y'all, up next. Oh, is my good friend, the brilliant Naomi Sosa. Naomi is currently pursuing an MSW at NYU. After living and teaching English in South Korea, she was inspired to engage in advocacy and community organizing work. Y'all, please let's give it up for Naomi Sosa.
Hi everyone, my name is Naomi Sosa and I will be reading an excerpt from my personal essay, Missing Care Instructions. Ven a peinarte que mañana vamos para la iglesia. Growing up, those words were an invitation to stop whatever I was doing and immediately meet mommy at our usual spot. Without fail, until I was 11, on Saturday nights, we met at the 3-sectional gray couch that took up the longest wall in our 4th-floor walk-up apartment. Siéntate aquí, she'd say. Mommy always prepped soft sofa cushions to prop me up higher. There, sitting in between her legs, I held onto her olive-skinned calves as she gently massaged my tender scalp, separating the loads of hair into smaller sections. There, I had her undivided attention. Together, we laughed, sung church hymns, recited Bible verses, and sometimes I even fell asleep. Lathered with hair cream like a wide-tooth comb, mommy meticulously caressed my coils with her fingers. Careful not to disrupt the existing curl pattern, she examined attentively for split ends and, gentle as fabric softener, moisturized each entangled clump. A red ponchera that doubled up as a basket housed all of the accessories that accumulated over time. Multicolored barrettes and snap clips, stretched out twin bead hair baubles with matching color jumbo balls, and satin ribbons she bought from the fabric lady on 139th and Broadway in every color imaginable. Spray bottles of varying sizes laid out on the wooden floor, all filled with homemade detangling concoctions, a mixture of equal parts coconut oil, some DR imported leave-in conditioner, and cold faucet water. Her level of tending was unmatched. The conditioning, the massaging, the steady reassurance that my hair's texture, although different than others in our family, was beautiful as is. There was a Dominican hair salon on 158th Street in Broadway. Thea and I frequented the salon together often. Once you were old enough, salon visits became a rite of passage for little girls. There was always so much going on. If it wasn't the pastelito lady coming in, it was a wholesale knife vendor or the guy selling off-brand leggings or bootleg DVDs. Tengo pastelito de queso, de carne, de pollo y jugo de chinola. ¿Cuál tú quieres, bebé? I knew we would be there for long when Tia bought pastelitos. The older ladies carried on with their gossiping through the shuffling of vendors selling their edible and wearable goods. The woman talked about the difficulties of navigating life as an immigrant in the United States, the long hours working on their feet, the spider veins that were growing on the back of their legs. The music always loud enough for everyone coming in to hear from the front door, but low enough that you could still listen to everyone's conversation and all the chisme. Sometimes the woman yelled over the host on La Mega 97.9. They yelled across the room for hand towels, combs, and extra rolos, but never did the radio get turned down. This was a place to find un coro, to hang out and distract themselves from the family and younger children that many of them left behind in the Dominican Republic. I quickly learned the love language of Dominican hairdressers, the ironing out of frizz in every single strand as an attempt to erase all the traces of unruly hair, of textured hair. From them, I learned that beauty is pain. If I wanted to be beautiful, by their standards, I had to endure la secadora, a scorching heat that burned my scalp, the skin on my ears, and the nape of my neck. Plastic ear covers and hand towels were loose change floating around. These only helped for a few minutes. I learned to withstand the yanking of tangled knots until my scalp became tender, the headaches that often came the next morning, a price to pay for the unsolicited compliments likening good hair to straight hair. They would say things like, para tener pelo bonitos tiene que aguantar jalones, or el pelo malo es una esclavitud, así que con el pelo lacio es más fácil y te ves más bella. Thank you.
Thank you. Give it up, y'all, for Naomi Sosa. I love how you use metaphor, Naomi. Your metaphors are dope, always. Did you say the plastic ear coverings and hand towels like loose change? Wait, I love it, I love it, I love it. More than that, thank you for bringing us so much dialogue and not translating. Thank you for not writing to the white gaze or any other gaze than your gaze, right? I'm super appreciative of that. Mad love, Naomi. Again, give it up. Naomi Sosa. All right, y'all, next up to the stage, we have, we have the exceptional Alexis Smithers. Alexis is a Black lesbian autistic writer, former staff writer for Autostraddle, and a current social media editor for Yes Yes Books Vinyl. They are a 2015 Pink Door Fellow and 2016 Lambda Literary Emerging Young Adult Fiction Writer. Hey, give it up for Alexis Smithers.
Hello, my name is Alexis Smithers, and I'll be reading from my personal essay, Vampire Hands. When I started going to my all-girls high school, I didn't understand why girls kept touching me. I mean, going out of their way to touch me. Hands grabbing my forearm as we walked down the hall together, smushed shoulder to shoulder in assemblies, even though there's plenty of room on the gym floor. Hugs after classes, even though I quite literally would see them 4 minutes later. People are usually surprised at my body, the amount of control I demand to have over it. The summer before 7th grade, my older cousin told me I wasn't Black enough. She ain't said nothing but a word, 'cause my body, I could fix that. That summer, in the bruising heat of my grandparents' house, all you would hear is BET and TV1 blasting from the den. Throughout the rest of middle school, I learned as many dances as I could, how I needed to hold my body steady under boys' gazes and hands, how to move my ass so mesmerizing that no one would have time to notice my eyes. See, I could make my body right. I took that same determination to high school, but this time I was worried as fuck because people didn't just tell me how well I pop locked and shook my ass and knew every Beyonce dance. They reached out and took my hands and swayed with me in the middle of the hallway on the way to lunch, making me think, what in the reciprocated fuck is this? There's a huge difference when I'm in the den practicing my body for boys and resignation, and when I'm in school and practice doesn't feel like practice anymore, and I'm not supposed to be reacting at all, but my body tells me different. There are so many girls that I fell in love with at least 10 times a day. That's the thing about being this young and closeted. I figure I can fall in love with any of them if I close my mouth long enough. But one of the most consistent loves was, of course, the one who touched me the most. I called her Vampire because she was so pale, brunette and slender. It's sophomore or junior year, and we're sitting in the basement of one of our friends' houses, and it's just me and her. I can't remember what I've said, but she's crawled into my lap, and my hands wrap around her waist without hesitation. When our friend comes down the steps, she laughs a little, uncomfortable. You two look cozy. Vampire doesn't move from my lap, just turns her head so she can see our friend clearer. She squeezes me tighter, says with a smile, Alexis is my lover. Our friend's eyebrows could reach the damn ceiling at this point, and I hold my breath. Vampire finishes quickly, until my boyfriend comes, of course. Of course. When you're young and closeted and believe you're damned unlovable, you don't get picky about being touched. When Vampire pulls me close after school, swaying to no music in the front lobby of the school, I don't question it. I just keep looking over her shoulder to make sure my mom hasn't come in yet. When she says we should dance like this at prom next week, of course my heart jumps, because I didn't think this touch could extend past the school walls, or the darkened basements, or 3 a.m. sleepovers. When you're young and closeted and believe you're damned unlovable, you don't get to be picky about love. Not at prom, when her boyfriend pulls her closer and she lays her head on his shoulder like she did on mine. Remember when we meet eyes? I was here for practice, of course. It's 2 years after high school and I can't get on the metro because it's too late and there are going to be so many more men than usual. And I am 7 hours of therapied out and I cannot have these men stick their hands, their fingers, their eyes into the wounds I've reopened today. There are some days I can sew myself up for the ride back home, but today is not one of them. I have a couple of people I can call. My dad, but he's got work and I hate asking him to come all the way up here when he's already got so much on his plate. My cousins might come, but then I'll have to explain why I was so lazy and didn't just get on the damn train. I scroll through my contacts, hoping someone's name will jump out. Just one person that won't question why I've done this. Vampire comes at the very end and I press call. I'm right outside Potbelly's, maybe 6 blocks from the metro, and she says, I can come get you. I've got a lot of guilt, some in asking, most in needing, but it doesn't outweigh my fear today. I say, thank you so much, or okay, or you don't have to do that, or whatever I say brings her to me, and it's at least a 30-minute drive home. She holds her hand out while she pulls towards the street, and I take it without hesitation. She doesn't ask me why I called her. She doesn't ask why my bottom lip is nearly bleeding from my teeth biting it so tight. She doesn't ask me why after I look at her directly in the eyes, I turn back to the sky. She just talks about her day and makes a joke, then laughs at my terrible attempt at one and pulls into my family's driveway. I invite her inside and she says, I've got to get back to school, and I nod, of course. She waves as she gets back into the driver's seat, and I say thank you again and watch her drive up to the road, turn on the left blinker, and go home. I go inside and give myself 1 minute. 1 minute to think of an excuse as to how I got home so early. 1 minute to plan how I'm going to get upstairs. 1 minute to remember the weight of her hand in mine. I give myself a minute in the garage, sweat starting to pour down my back, and I give myself a minute that lasts at least 10, because I have to remember. It isn't love. It never was. It's just rehearsal. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that piece, Alexis. Give it up for Alexis Smithers. All right, y'all. Next up is the unforgettable Amber Worsley. Amber has been described as by most as quirky, hard-headed, and even harder to please. At 18, Amber escaped a small town in a red state and a religious extremist upbringing. Now Amber is in Brooklyn, New York, feeding her craving for a Black community that embodies the love for oneself that was sparse where she grew up. Give it up for Amber Worsley.
Hi, my name is Amber Worsley, and I'm reading an excerpt from my memoir essay, Black Lives Matter, but a list of reasons why you can't stop the sentence there. Black Lives Matter, but looting is wrong. Laws about stealing and property are more important than Black lives. Black Lives Matter, but riots are barbaric. A sense of control over Black bodies is more important than Black lives. I thought back to 2 days earlier, the night when I hurt my legs, when my friend Xavier and I walked up into the cool air at 14th Street and 8th Avenue. The pandemic-affected streets seemed dormant, covered in silence. Then came 7th Avenue. Do you hear something? 6th Avenue. Do you smell smoke? 5th Avenue was when I started clutching his hand. There we were greeted with people protesting the death of George Floyd as they ran away from NYPD officers. Union Square was blocked by an army with crooked lips, tired eyes, and hands swinging batons that looked like the baseball bat I used to swing at trees to release anger as a child. Next to me, I noticed Xavier's brown lips, soft hair, and assertive eyes. Later, he would laugh about the moment, claiming I must have been scared because I held on to him so tightly. He doesn't know I was clutching his hand to make sure he wasn't taken away from me. I pulled him away from the blue gaze of the baton twirlers, then pulled his ear close to my mouth. What are they even guarding? He sucked his teeth. What they've been guarding since day one, capitalism. While attempting to evict my roommate, my landlord claimed that he was struggling financially. In my spare time during the pandemic's peak, I set out to fact-check him, only to find a list of public documents explaining that he was grossly wealthy. Searching around NewYorkCity.gov for any legitimacy to the claim that my landlord could be struggling financially, I came across a breakdown of how property taxes keep our society going. 40% of property taxes pay for the same police force that I saw drag a man taking a picture from the sidewalk into the street to handcuff him and beat him. My landlord is paying for that, and I'm paying my landlord. Black Lives Matter, but why act like animals? Suited up or with pants sagging, I equally feel I have the right to dehumanize you, because the right you claim to humanity is unsightly. If you want to talk about property, we can start here. Africans were looted from our land alongside a wealth of artifacts that are sold for thousands today and hang in tax-funded public museums. We are disproportionately barred from owning property. That same system funds the police who choke us on film in broad daylight, while we gasp, "I can't breathe"? Why would a revolution not look like property being taken back? I don't stick around for any conversations about property. I've never had any interest because I've never had any. When you're ready, we can talk about lives, Black lives. But we're ready now. We've been ready for 400 years. When we can have the conversation without any mention of property, as if we are still slaves who should be compared to clothes, electronics, and walls, maybe then we could talk about peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Give it up for Amber Worsley. Thank you for that truth, fam. Next up, we have Hiyori Kim. Hiyori Kim grew up in, outside, and on the edges of Germany, Korea, and the United States. While encouraging people to claim their belonging to the intricate web of life, Hiyori is also penning stories to further make sense of hers. Give it up for Hiyori Kim.
Hello, my name is Hiyori, and I'll be reading an excerpt of my essay, Searching for Tongues, a love letter to you, me, and us. You swallowed a lot of things through your childhood, waiting to become a grown-up, to speak as an equal, vowing not to forget the things that you didn't have words for yet. When you're not burying your head in your arms, mourning your language barrier, you are spending incalculable amounts of time studying English. You might go to one of your English classes after school today and cram in the words on the tedious vocabulary list. How else would you survive this globalizing world in which even your own country won't let you through a respectable door without a decent TOEFL score? You are inundated in books, articles, media presentations of other Koreans sharing their success stories of conquering English and what methods they used. They always say the word conquer. You just want to be able to read Anne of Green Gables in its original text. I can tell you what will happen to you, where you are headed. After 9th grade, you leave the haunted schools and enclosed English classrooms. You moved to the United States and spent the first year in Raleigh, North Carolina. It will be many things. There, you won't find a wide meadow, sheep to roam with, and an ocean nearby as you fantasized about. There will be other wide things, such as Walmart and Toys R Us. Your worldview will be broadened by the knowledge that there are places on this earth where there is enough space to put everything on the first floor. You will come to dislike the manicured suburbs where you can walk for 30 minutes and not reach a destination, neither of convenience nor wild beauty. You will fear plunging into the real English-speaking world, but no worries, you won't completely drown. Your tongue will dance at moments when it feels welcomed, mostly around kindred elder white Christian women who will accidentally give you the idea that your soul needs saving. There will also be Mrs. Mason's ESL class. Mrs. Mason will make you memorize lines from Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech and will tell you in secret that she believes history would have taken a different course if women had been the leaders. You will sit, stand, and walk through many other spaces, tongue-tied. During the dreaded lunchtime, you will meander the segregated cafeteria, wondering where to sit. It will be the Muslim girls that never appeared in your English textbooks that will invite you to their table. As you drift through the year in a daze, you will learn there is such a thing as a Southern accent, African American vernacular English, and many more ways English is spoken, and many people it is spoken by. The proud English conquerors and Korean textbooks filled with pale faces didn't care to tell you these things. The scripted conversations you were taught were always so nice. Hello, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. And you? There will be no scripts for when men of all different shades and ages scan your body up and down, greeting you with ni hao, and unsavory looks. Teachers won't beat you, but you'll have plenty other violence to bear. Just as you have so far for many years, you will continue to delegate, materializing thoughts into words to your future self, muttering silently, when I know how to name this, when I become more fluent, when I become articulate. How could you speak if you were only taught the language of conquerors who did not share your concerns, the language connected to your reality, as well as those of your peers living on the margins, cannot come from them? The books, tapes, movies that are your study materials are devoid of the voices you need, your voice. It is no wonder that your silenced comrades will seem like others to you, even after you suffer the blows of gazes that violate them and you. It will take you many more years to find the words that connect you to those who want their tongues to be theirs too. Thank you.
Give it up for Hiyori Kim. How can you speak when you've only been taught the language of conquerors? Damn. That's one of those lines that you're like, damn, I wish I wrote that. You know what I'm saying? Oh, so good. Thank you, Hiyori. Again, give it up for Hiyori Kim. Our last storyteller to perform before our break is my friend, the lovely Sabrina Sorrow. Sabrina is a worker and participant in the healing arts. They are queer, non-binary, and a person of color. They are an LMSW from Columbia University, currently pursuing their MFA at CCNY. Give it up, y'all, for Sabrina Sorrow.
Hey everyone, my name is Sabrina and I will be reading a personal essay called Other Words for Hunger. What can be said about the relationship between food and rape? I am still unable to answer this question with complete confidence. Growing up, I thought the relationship between food and rape was close to non-existent until the first time I caught Shalimashi force-feeding one of the other children his own vomit. Little Rahul, let's call him that, could barely finish the heaping mass of basmati rice on his plate, let alone the dal, potatoes, and sabji Shalimashi took the time to make. You must finish all of the food, she foamed at the mouth, becoming something unidentifiable before us, dragging his little body to the bathroom as he purged some onto the red carpet, leaving a trail of mustard green. Hey! Shalimashi grew louder with each of Rahul's intermittent screams, tears pooling at his chin, his stomach becoming one contraction after the next, growing hungrier. In the living room, I saw the terror, averting my gaze, but looking in every so often to see her rolling vomit into tiny balls she'd then stuff into his mouth. Silent, while nibbling on my lower lip, I chanted, I'm so glad that's not me. I'm so glad that's not me. I'm so glad she would never do that to me. When Shalimashi was not lecturing me about how poor kids in India do not have food to waste, she'd scoop me into her arms and squeeze me tightly. When I did not yet realize that Shalimashi measured her love for us, for me, through how much of her food we ate, savored, and finished, she'd rub coconut oil in my hair and sing me her favorite Hindi songs. Cooing to me that I was her favorite, she'd assert, You're like my second daughter, Sab. I love you so much. As a child, I looked forward to her greeting me after a long day of classes. Waiting for me by the school gate, she arrived on time. Her red bindi, something I never missed amongst the swarm of parents waiting to pick their children up from school. How was it today? She held my hand and carried my backpack. Good. I looked up at her, pressed my weight into her palm, and thought about how lucky I was to have a babysitter that loved me like her own, that saw me as family and not as other. Shalimashi, sometimes mother and sometimes monster, prepared meals for us when some of our own parents could not. Roasted the roti just right, the blue flame underneath the pan kissing brown onto the white parathas. set the table to her liking. The array of spices, a perimeter around the dishes of hot chicken, potatoes, and mustard shrimp. Made sure our glasses were filled with water, her face filling with the satisfaction at each forkful we brought to our mouths. In the evenings, we sat by the television with her face covered by the shadows of a nearing midnight, and watched Indian soap operas. "It's okay, you can sit on the couch this time," she'd announce, a treat, an invitation that was given to us when she was in one of her good moods. The couch, usually the piece of furniture that bore witness to our misplaced love for Shalimashi at times, was the treat we received when we were being good, when we ate her food with no complaints. "Look, Sub, look at her sari," she exclaimed, her cheeks swelling with excitement, her eyes glued to the screen. "I'll get you one like that soon." She turned to face me, her hand on my leg, the warmth of her body, a type of blanket on my skin. "Sub, come, I have a treat for you." She ushered me into the kitchen, scooped a handful of chanichur into her hand, leaned my head back, and nearly purred watching me, my mouth open, chewing and swallowing. Tiny pieces of the famous Indian snack that jutted out of me with each crunch. "Eat it!" she spat, a smile still on her face, her grip on my forehead tighter. To love Shalimashi meant to eat her food and to eat all of it. The slightest semblance of waste enough to trigger her violence. 3 scoops later and I lurched. 3 attempted swallows later and I tried to fight back the urge to expel, but struggled. The warning sign that typically came before the massacre. How my mouth grew with saliva and started to drown inside it. How the body shut down when it could no longer fill itself with the entry. "Don't waste it, Sub. Here, one more scoop," she continued as I released a laugh, the sound of a chopped hum, and tried to squeeze out a smile. Something to let her know I enjoyed the taste, that I loved her feeding me, that even though I was full, I still wanted more, that despite my insides revolting against me slowly, I still wanted to hold on to the Shalimashi that treated me like I was her favorite. As a child, and even sometimes as an adult, I could not say no to Shalimashi's food, to say no to that offering of herself. The hours spent peeling the potatoes and churning the ghee was an assault on her culture, character, and love. As a child, I could not bear to express the extent of my fullness to her, how that mere word became a gunshot in her ear, how her darkness could not break free until she knew each and every one of us ate all her food, left no trace of being unappreciative of her time, her labor in the form of our meals. I knew the lie then like I know it now, the way it takes on a mouth and becomes a separate organ growing inside the body, one I could not ignore when it started to grow inside mine. How I still feel the rape move inside me, my body a lost item in the ether of who I once was. The lie bends every year, becomes an extension of a truth I wish I could have. I make excuses and say, but she loved us. She was suffering. She didn't know any better. She loved me. This is how the lie gaslights me, makes me forget that love is not rape. I wanted to believe that even in her love for us, in her love for me, that her demons were not actually there. That she didn't one evening force.
I'm so sorry, Sabrina, that you're way over the 5.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, good.
Woo! Thank you so much, Sabrina, for such a courageous, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking narrative that many folks will find healing from. Thank you so much. Everyone, we can snap it up again. Also, before we go to break, I want to show love to all of the performers who have participated thus far. Please give it up for Porscha Simmons, Omayma Khayat, Elisabet Marchant, aka Lara Tanisha White, LaTasha Sherell James, Krystal Jagoo, Naomi Sosa, Alexis Smithers, Amber Worsley, Hayuri Kim, and Sabrina Sorrow. Everyone, we now have 5 minutes. We'll see you on the other side.
How, rites of passage, learning Nicaragua, and how we
What's good?
was good.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, everyone. It's great to be back in the space with you. I hope you enjoyed. Your break. Excellent. Coming up to the stage. Coming up to the stage is Briyana D. Clarel. Briyana is a Black queer theater artist, writer, and educator passionate about musical theater, mangoes, and memoirs. Born and raised in South Jersey, they hold a BA in sociology from Princeton University, and they love to sleep, they love ferns, and taro bubble tea. Give it up for Briyana D. Clarel.
Hi, my name is Briyana D. Clarel, and I will be reading an excerpt from my memoir essay, The Years Measured in Distance from the Ocean. I return to Austin and leave for New Orleans. I don't offer to drive, not willing to risk being pulled over while Black in the South. Thinking of Sandra Bland, my eyes meet the Houston skyline for the first time. My chatty white classmates drive us over the third longest bridge in the country. In and out of sleep, I eat vegan cream cheese on gluten-free bread in the back seat. They talk so much. They discuss major historical storms unfamiliar to me. I drown out their continuous conversation with Monica Martin on repeat, studying the water. The American Alliance for Theater and Education Conference boasts a sea of white. On the way to the French Market, the sky opens in a way I've never seen. Suddenly, surrounded by the waterfalls of a strange urban water park, I hobble on broken green platform sandals to cover. Clothes and curls drenched, I buy a whole new outfit from a Black woman's stand. Wrapped in a long pattern yellow skirt and matching head wrap, I feel home. I trust our Uber's massive truck tires to deliver us through the floods. I escape the conference hotel to stay with friends. And at a queer pool party, I smile at the people splashing but don't get in. I fly to Ann Arbor. The Pride Youth Theater Alliance conference is a pond of white. On the bus to Detroit, I grab the mic to question the white women's decision to take us on a segregation tour. Bodak Yellow blasts in my earbuds on repeat. I don't see any water. I want to go home. I return to Austin. My partner is now my ex and moves out. The desire to reconnect evaporates. I shove old gifts and pots left behind into a black trash bag for my friend to return. I donate the black and red shirts plucked from their closet. They write me a lengthy letter, which I burn badly. It rains for days. They name the rain and the wind Harvey. The rain sings me to sleep. The rain slows and Austin is back. 3 hours away, Houston is not. It's my birthday weekend, and my friend successfully zips me into the very low-cut fuchsia nasty gal dress for the first time. They snap pre-party photos of me posing with dark chocolate charcoal sorbet on the vegan ice cream shop's plastic floral benches. My gas tank won't make it downtown. All the pumps we pass are covered in plastic, empty. We pull up to my building as my neighbor laughs in the parking lot with a radiant friend I've never seen. As the four of us pile into my neighbor's car towards the same party, I can't stop smiling. I broke before when you laughed your name and light sang through the car, when rain and rock and wood conspired and you ended up resting your golden smile on my couch, the air soft and tender and electric. 2 days pass and I turn 26 at the pool, surrounded by friends, supported by pineapple and donut floaties. I float on my back, held by the water, savoring moments where I don't have to fully support myself. Upstairs in my third floor living room, we sing show tunes and laugh until late. I fall in love. We eat chips lying on a heart-stamped cloth under the stars, and I beam, even if it's not a date. We sing The Color Purple in my silver Buick. I cry a lot. My heart cracked open, ugly but a beautiful breaking, necessary, a reminder that I could still feel, that everything wasn't pain and hurt and fighting to love, to learn, to exist. A tenured white woman calls me volatile. My white classmates protest after pushing me out of their process and stealing my words for their demands. They flee the room, leaving the Black students to mop up their mess. The chair of the department reports me for racism. 2 campus offices investigate me. My social media is monitored. I am blamed for my white classmates' actions. I withdraw from school. I look forward to drives to the grocery stores. I chuckle at episode after episode of Living Single. I listen to the Black Panther score on repeat by the pool. The anxiety comes in waves. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Give it up for Briyana, y'all. Thanks so much, Briyana, for that beautifully rendered work. Up next, we have Yolande Clark Jackson. Yolande was born in Beantown, HBU schooled in B. Moore, and now schooling others in MIA. Yolande is a member of the Black Binders on Facebook and personal essayist on Facebook as well as the South Florida Writers Association. Give it up for Yolande Clark Jackson.
Hi, my name is Yolande, and I'll be reading What I Needed. It's an excerpt. When my mother crouched over me and parted my hair down the middle with her black rat-tail comb, I wish she could have told me something I needed to know. While I sat in one of the wooden chairs from the kitchen table closest to the stove, I no longer had to be reminded to sit still. Instead, I wish my mother chanted, "You are beautiful. Your hair is beautiful," into the center of my scalp. I wish my brain could have absorbed that as a young girl. I wish I didn't listen to the sound my hair made when it sizzled against the hot comb and the grease on Sunday mornings. I can still hear the message in my ear. This will help, but it won't last. I went to Shiloh Baptist Church on Sunday mornings. It was a dark chocolate 3-story corner church with shingles and stained glass windows. I did what all the Black girls did my age. I sat in the sanctuary with my hands folded to pray and sing, "This little light of mine." Our bangs were straightened and bumped into a curl on our foreheads, but my patchy brown skin was much drier than the shiny solid hues of their cinnamon, caramel, and toffee complexions. I wore tights all year long to hide my skin, while other girls wore ruffled socks and bare legs in summer. On the hottest days, I would violently dig my thumbnail through the tights. My mother would say, "Stop digging." I couldn't stop the itching, and I didn't have the spell I needed to make it stop. Because I only knew to give offerings of dollars and cents to a hat-shaped collection plate, it would have been radical to have stopped at the tree across the street, to leave an ebo of porridge for the Ajay, Iami, or Iawaz, the old, ancient mothers of the earth. The Yoruba know to do this. I later would learn to do this. My mother and her mother had forgotten how to feed the earth and turned to their spiritual mothers to heal. They had left the magic of the natural world behind in the rows of cotton they walked through with their gunny sacks worn across their bodies. The mothers I saw each Sunday wore long dresses, pantyhose, and coarse roller set curls that were not completely combed out. These mothers drank coffee and tea in the basement of the church, while I waited nearby in a half circle, listening to a few girls my age while watching my mother stir the small straw around in her cup. I just wanted to go home and take off the tights. I want to say that my whole life I knew my mother loved me, but I never felt she believed I was fine the way I was. I know I never thought I was fine the way I was. I needed an inhaler to breathe, creams to stop itching, rules to keep me from saying too much or doing anything to embarrass myself or my family. "Smile more," my mother often said. "You don't want to look mean." I wish she knew to ask me how I was feeling. I wish she knew to say, you don't need to smile to make other people comfortable. Smile in the mirror and see your light. On those evenings when my mother crouched over me as I sat in the tub with the smoky color of Aveeno oats floating on the surface, I felt peace watching the water flow from the faucet. She used a white washcloth to wash my back while the rest of my body soaked in my mother's confidence that the dermatologist knew best on how to soothe my burning, itching skin. I watched her turn the washcloth over and over again under the water and squeeze out the excess to wash my small, thin, shivering body. The baths were the bedtime ritual, and I wish my mother knew to sing a song for Yamanya. Ka, 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 Yamanya olodu. Kai, 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 esesu olodu. I wish she knew to light a candle for the ancestors. Yet I know it would have been radical for my mother to let the smoke of burning sage clean the energy around us, or to add Florida water and white flowers to my baths each night. Those nights when my eczema was the worst, I wish my mother knew the truth that was more powerful than Aveeno, Eucerin, and cortisone cream. I needed to know that I could save myself and that the spirit guides were waiting to help me. Thank you.
Please, y'all, give it up for Yolande Clark Jackson. Thank you for taking us on that journey. Thank you, Yolande. Thank you. Next up, we have Celeste Chan. Celeste is a writer schooled by do-it-yourself culture and immigrant parents from Malaysia and the Bronx. She founded and directed Queer Rebels, a queer and trans people of color arts project, created and curated experimental films, joined Foglifter Literary Journal as an editor and board member, and toured with the legendary feminist roadshow, Sister Spit. Y'all, give it up for Celeste Chan.
Hi, my name is Celeste Chan, and I'm reading an excerpt of my personal essay, Not Vanishing. Your dad is hospitalized for the second time this month. Your sister wheels him in, and they finally notice his rapid decline and run an MRI. No stroke, no brain tumor. His infection is starting to clear, but he has to relearn his abilities. He can barely hold his cell phone. The day he is discharged to skilled nursing, you are 7 hours on Zoom, body numb, immobile. By night, you stand in the kitchen, glance at the sink piled high with mugs, a crumb-crusted plate, a couple of Ziploc bags. You will not wash dishes. Fruit snacks on the floor, you look over at that bag, the My Little Pony winking at you, her sherbet pink, blue, purple hair caught mid-toss. You rummage, rip open a packet, smash saccharin gummies into your mouth, down it with a shot of tequila, and wait for the burn. Break open a new bag. You eat standing up, waiting for that sugar explosion because your heart races, skips while your diabetic dad is in skilled nursing 800 miles away, relearning how to walk, held up by nurses in plastic shields and gowns. You drop that crinkled wrapper in the trash, walk back to your room and flop on the bed. Grab your velour blanket, wrap yourself up, cocoon. Think about your dad alone in a hospital bed, except for daytime, surrounded by astronaut suits. Does he see anything? Is there just a blank wall or curtain? Your hand goes pins and needles as you type into the blank screen. Your body shakes when you try to get up. Your hot water with honey has been sitting so long that it's gone cold. You throw your things in trash bags, a suitcase, a granny cart running up and down the 3 stories of your apartment, squish everything into the trunk of your rental car. Drive for 15 hours because you make too many stops, get out again for gas, coffee, phone charger, bathroom. You yawn and do jumping jacks by the side of the road. You steer the car around mountains and through rain, California, Oregon, Washington. When you arrive, the home is so quiet, your mom's sleeping, your yellow lab charges at you, thumps his tail, begs to be taken for a walk. When night falls and you settle into the living room, you dream your dad is at the edge of a cliff, rope tied around him, rocks tumbling down beneath his feet. You wake up sweating, clutching the blankets, palms and face hot, as if you've seen him fall again. You wonder who else knows about this, what it's like to care for an elder immigrant parent during the pandemic of xenophobia and the coronavirus. Thank you.
Now, y'all, give it up for Celeste. Thank you so much, Celeste. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Meadows-Fernandez. Australia is a Brooklyn-based Latina writer who is a long-standing member of a writing group of educators who happen to also be writers. She's currently working on a narrative story about her childhood, where she spent years in a tropical country fantasizing about reuniting with her mother while sitting on top of a tree or chasing butterflies. Please join me in welcoming to the stage, Meadows-Fernandez.
My name is Meadows-Fernandez, and I will be reading an excerpt from my personal essay, Darkness Fell. A few days later, Mommy arrived. She landed in our living room one December morning. She walked straight into the rocking chair I sat in with Pablito and Eileen on each side. She stood above us with a taffeta red blouse and black pants. A thick, round gold chain with a palm tree and the Dominican flag dangled low below her neck. Every Dominican who came from the States had a gold chain. You can have anything you want in the US, it implied. We smelled the US fragrance on her. It was on her hair as she leaned down toward us. Soy tu madre, no me das un beso, she demanded. Even though I worked on hating Mommy since I was 3.5 years old, I dreamed of seeing her. Now at 10, I was frozen. I didn't recognize her. I squirmed and inhaled deeply as she lowered her head toward me for a kiss. The next morning, I heard her loud laughter coming from the kitchen. I could not believe she was here, laughing after so many years. Aline, Pablito, and I got up quickly and ran across a saguan. As we entered the kitchen, we saw the embers underneath the boiling pot of milk in the fogon. We sat close to her by the pilon, but not too close. We knew she was our mother, but only because they told us. In New York, she said, you get on these long trains to go from one place to another. You hear cha-cha-cha on your way to work, she said and burst into laughter. Theo and Tia laughed too. Then you get into these electric metal escalators. Ale didn't know how to get on. Be careful. I yelled. She jumped, ha ha. I remembered Mommy always telling stories. I listened to her, wanting to be so close, but conflicted about whether she was mine. Tia Amanda passed down a cafecito to each of us, as we always did in the morning. She was extra nice in front of Mommy. Mommy layered the I love my kids tone. I miss them so much. It hurt to be away from them, she said. I gave her a side glance. I was not 5 anymore. I knew she abandoned us. Still, when she took us to the bedroom and opened the suitcase, I happily examined the violet-colored pencil with green and lavender flowers on the bottom, and the matching blouses she brought me from and Arlene. I was so excited to go to the place I was meant to go since Mommy left that I didn't think about what I would leave behind. Our dog Tigre ran and barked after us as we looked out the back window of the small white car when we disappeared the next morning with Mommy. I sat in the back seat of the car with Pablito sandwiched between me and Arlene. Our mother was here. We were finally leaving. It was strange walking into that airplane where we sat next to each other on a long row. I looked out the window and far, far down I saw the ocean and sometimes clouds all around us. Suddenly it hit me that it was real. Papa was down there and we were not saying goodbye to him. Nobody told him we were leaving for good. I felt my heart drop and my eyes began to tear, but I held it in. I didn't say anything to Mommy. All those years as I was passed from one adult to another, I learned to push the pain deep below where nobody felt my presence. I didn't realize this would haunt me for the rest of my life, and I would feel responsible for abandoning him. My eyes were set on that airplane that would take us to that place where you get to have everything you want, especially mommy. Thank you.
Give it up for Australia-Fernandez. Thank you for giving us such rich scenes, Australia. I can't wait to read the rest of that piece. All right, y'all, coming up to the mic, we have Camille Dantzler. Camille is a doctoral researcher with an expertise in African film and literature, gender studies, critical race theory, public policy, and critical trauma studies. Ooh, she has published poetry in Becoming, Undisciplined Literary Journal, and has held multiple research fellowships, including the Frederick Douglass Doctoral Fellowship, Just Julian Research Fellowship, and Sasakawa Young Leaders Foundation Fellowship. Y'all don't come on now and give a hand to Camille Dantzler.
Hi, my name is Camille Dantzler, and I'll be reading an excerpt from my personal essay, Daw Baby. Daw Baby, Daw's baby. Throughout our 3 weeks in Mississippi, a resentment brewed in my 9-year-old body. No one knew my name, something my parents had always told me to be defiant and establishing. Go by nothing else. Surely my mother would understand why I would scrunch up my nose at this distant cousin or auntie. That family, they should know my name. In retaliation of every misnomer, I would say it again, louder and more annoyed, Camille. My older sister found it wasteful. You know we may never come back anyway. Do you think they'll remember? She was always good at rationing words. What I realized was that for my mother, she was being heard. Daw, though 25 years absent, the memories she recalled to us were so vivid, with joy and pain often intertwined. Stories echoed through puckered lips after every gulp of Aunt Laverne's sour lemonade. Chronicles of beheading chickens with her older brother, watching its last commands decline, to describing her cousin Candace drowning. 5 boys trekked to the ravine that day, but only 4 returned. Candace dove headfirst from a cliff, impacted head-on by a boulder below the water's surface. The retrieval of his body left questions behind. Meridian signified a sense of acceptance, something the Midwest repeatedly declined to offer. There were things Daw wasn't asked here, like, why do you talk like that? Which she later shared was often an occurrence in some shape or form at my dad's engineering work events. To be country and ghetto, rather than the one who got out, which is how they referred to my father at his family functions. Mississippi wasn't without violations, a testament to the gulf between us, memories and miles. Daw Baby stories were cradled in a familiar embrace, a life that I never knew. While my mother was less forthright of early life as I came of age, later years, now she speaks. She reveals, I was protecting y'all. Her memories were bound by a family assault, a molestation of the body and mind, which gave rise to the fear of repetitions. While my mother's scars went unseen, my grandmother, Geneva, bore the traces of the outgrowth of Jim Crow, rose and ivory ridges across the landscape of her flesh, evidence of third-degree scarring. At the age of 16, her father struck a match to a gasoline can she stood near, creating a fiery explosion that engulfed her frame. While my grandmother can recount in great detail what he did that day, she stopped short of knowing his intent. Perhaps she didn't ask. What could he say? To what edge are we pushed when we decide to extinguish ourselves and generations? She was born of him, his blood, his name, just as I was born of my mother. To be Black and experience Southern hospitality is always a prickled welcome, disrupted by the remembrance of the past. Your body or your mind betrays the illusion of the good old days. Either way, you know it's not real, but you hold on to a devotion to being, to place, to names, because beyond their presence is the constant threat of erasure. The ceremonious rupture from name, particularly for Black women, has brought ferocious defiance when the threat of dislocation from ourselves approaches. As I reflect on my mother, her mother, our mothers, I well with pride, My body is archive. An abundance of knowledge pulses through me. Dawes, baby. Thank you.
Damn, give it up for Camille Dantzler, fam. Did you just say, to what edge are we pushed when we choose to extinguish ourselves and other generations? Damn. Damn. That's a great writing prompt. I might have to email that to y'all. We got to write about that. Thank you so much. Everyone, give it up again for Camille Dantzler with Dolls, Baby. Language. Nonfiction, y'all. Nonfiction. Coming through so literary. Dominic Cinnamon Bradley is our next storyteller on the mic. Dom is a Brooklyn-based Black queer artist and educator reared in the crunk era dirty South. An aspirant to the contemporary niggerati, Dominic accepts the price of authenticity and stands ready to lay down their words as collateral for a bold and fabulous life. With a bio like that, there really is no more introduction needed. Give it up for Dominic Bradley.
My name is Dominic Cinnamon Bradley, and I am reading an excerpt of my memoir essay, Young, Autistic, and Black. Wreathed in the ghosts of hospitalizations past, I stood manic and alone in the middle of the crowded Bellevue CPEP for the second time in 2 years. The summer days had lengthened, and it was still light out when my friend relinquished me to the professionals. I was embroiled in my first Saturn return, and it had unleashed loss, housing insecurity, and now carceral mental health treatment. If a mirror were at my disposal, I suspected my eyes, the eyes of someone with a foot on 2 different planes, would have haunted me. My visions, or what some might call hallucinations, slowed to a trickle, and I became fully aware of my surroundings. The sickly fluorescent lights, the edge of an occupied gurney, murmuring voices. The dam broke. Echoes of those visions flooded my conscious mind. I asked aloud, am I autistic? In a tentative voice. An anonymous doctor approached noiselessly, a syringe in hand. I noticed little about the doctor's physical appearance or demeanor. The syringe transfixed me. Panicked, I demanded to know, what are you putting in my body? Somewhere behind the doctor's right shoulder, a fellow patient, a white, middle-aged brunette, uttered quietly, oh my God. That was the last thing I heard. The world went black. I stemmed to self-soothe. Along with ripping out my cuticles and rubbing my eyes, I discovered my biggest stem, nicotine, while an undergrad. A university employee raped me barely 6 weeks into my freshman year. I sought help at their counseling center, and the treating psychiatrist prescribed Zoloft. He was an older white man with snowy hair who delicately fiddled with my dosage while the world burned down around me. I was so fatigued my grades plummeted. The university threatened expulsion. I acted decisively. I marched down to the nearest Royal Farms and bought my first pack of cigarettes. They not only kept me awake, but also they regulated my mood better than a pill ever could. Shorts, longs, lights, regulars, all differences without distinction. Marlboros, Camels, Parliaments, Virginia Slims, Benson and Hedges, Dunhills, Newports, American Spirits, unfiltered Pall Malls. I've smoked everyone. Packing the cigarettes, hearing the lighter, taking the first drag, composed a sacred ritual that allowed my overtaxed system to finally, blessedly relax. Cigarettes blunted the horror of my shattered dignity long enough for me to focus and dulled the urge to kill myself using faster means. Cigarettes were the one stem I could enjoy freely and still not get clocked as autistic. I explored self-diagnosis because I cannot trust the medical community to view me holistically or take accountability for their implicit bias. At Bellevue, I was told to trust that my doctor could keep me safer than me, which I swallowed until another patient sexually assaulted me. Initially, my doctor treated my disclosure like a delusion. Then he remarked, "You're so intelligent. Why are you acting like a victim?" I believe I am on the autism spectrum. I set out to understand myself better and to find community. I also need to get off the hamster wheel in regards to time and labor. I shouldn't have to risk autistic burnout by attempting to keep up pace with neurotypicals. Nina Simone once said, "I'm sorry I did not become the world's first Black classic pianist. I think I would have been happier. I'm not very happy now." The same cultural forces that dogged Nina impact me too. They hunger to sacrifice me to a racialized, ableist, wet dream, but I am no one's casualty. That was the immense gift spiritual emergency bestowed upon me. I swear on my Black neurodivergent ancestors, I will not waste it. Thank you.
You better come through, Dom. Give it up, y'all, for Dominic, Cinnamon, Bradley. Thank you for that narrative. Thank you for the rage. We need to see that. We need to see that in print, fam. Mad love. Thank you, Dominic. Next up to the mic is Tanya Abari. Tanya Abari is a former teacher turned multi-passionate creative who has been obsessed with words since childhood. Beyond the classroom, Tanya has contributed content, editorial expertise, and bias/sensitivity consulting across several industries. Y'all, give it up for Tanya Abari.
Hello, beautiful people. My name is Tanya Abari, and I'll be reading an excerpt from my personal essay, Long Ride Home. The attending nurse inquired, "Is everything okay?" I gave an affirmative nod and lowered my head in hopes of avoiding conversation. "Your blood pressure is way too high, and you've gained lots of weight since your last appointment." Intuition urged me to confide in the nurse because her warm, radiant skin was inviting. A motherly figure, just like what I imagined the midwives to be, just like what I wanted my own mother to be. She cared, and I still chose to remain silent. Perhaps this is a conversation I should have with my midwife instead, I thought. This place was appealing, likely because it was the only midwifery practice covered by our insurance. An onboarding pamphlet advertised the clinic to be a sanctuary for Black and brown mothers to be. While there wasn't a single Black midwife, the waiting room was filled with women that looked like mothers in the pamphlet, women like me. Situated between two abandoned buildings, the clinic was eerily similar to the OBGYN that I had decided against early in my pregnancy. I had only chosen a midwifery practice because I read online that they were generally more understanding. The midwives, however, worked on rotation, making it nearly impossible to develop a personal relationship with any of the women who would be delivering life from my body. I was to give birth in the hospital, and whoever was on call would be the designated midwife. This medical apartheid isn't what I envisioned, but I didn't have the resources to choose otherwise. "Your midwife will be in to speak with you shortly," said the nurse. "Ugh, not her," I mumbled as I saw who the attendant was for the day. Previous appointments had proven Claire to be the least empathetic of all the midwives, very short and often rude. Most exchanges were approached with arrogance. Claire snatched the notes and immediately expressed disappointment in the numbers. In a condescending tone, she scolded, "You are going to be someone's mother. You shouldn't be gaining so much weight. And since high blood pressure runs in your family, you'll likely need to take something to get that down. Have you implemented the healthy eating plan? Are you at least walking a few times per week?" After Claire finished wagging her proverbial finger, I snapped back. It's not the food and it's not the walking. Then what's wrong? As your midwife, I can't do anything unless I know what's really going on. Well, we both just lost our jobs and I think I'm depressed. Then I burst into tears. It's not like me to cry. My pain is buried deep beneath dimples, deep belly laughs, and shiny lumineers. But the recent layoffs, just 2 months shy of giving birth, has shaken me to my core. I was unprepared. I was disappointed. I was angry. There was no baby shower or fancy maternity photo shoots. And the only other person I had in my corner was melancholy too. I wasn't sure how to unpack everything, and the uncertainty was a zombie feasting on my limbic system. In the midst of weeping, Claire tried to convince me that losing work and feeling vulnerable was actually quite normal. But if I needed to talk to someone about depression, I should contact the insurance provider for research-free services. She then handed me 2 pamphlets, a generic nutrition infographic and a trifold explaining the dangers of high blood pressure during pregnancy. I wiped my tears, tucked both pamphlets into a brown paper bag and left. Rain tap danced across the front window as the book Expecting Better played its final chapter over my car stereo. With traffic at a standstill, I felt the front right corner of my car leaning. I got out of the car to check the tire pressure. A flat. Surely someone would see a pregnant woman on the side of the road and stop to help. And then I remembered how Black women are rarely damsels in distress. One by one, drivers passed me by, refusing to recognize my existence and splashing muddy water as they sped past. Clearly, I'm not just a Black pregnant body. I am an active brain and lip-smacking, peach deep, sometimes too aggressive in its honesty, a sweetheart that wholly loves completely. I am not gonna lie and pacify. I am arms to hold. I am lips to speak. I'm a motherfucking G. But am I? As I fiddled with the tire, I began to sob again. I wasn't fabricating hurt. It was there, just like the flat tire. As much as I needed help changing the tire, I also needed a trusted healthcare professional to recognize walking, living, breathing depression. I got neither. This is the Black pregnant woman manifesto. As for the tire, I was able to put on the spare. And as for the midwife, she was only right about one thing. I was about to be someone's mother. Thank you.
You motherfucking right, you a motherfucking G. Give it up for Tanya Abari. Yes, you better come the fuck through. Thank you, Tanya, for that. Thank you so much for that narrative, and I'm sorry that, yeah, you know. Thank you so much, Tanya. Coming up to the mic, we have Daniela Velázquez. Daniela is a social justice advocate who has helped organizations from the ACLU of Missouri and the Ferguson Commission tell their stories. Growing up Pentecostal and Puerto Rican in the burbs of St. Louis shaped her multicultural worldview. We're about to get some of this dopeness from Daniela Velázquez. Give it up.
Hi, I'm Daniela Velázquez, and I'll be reading from my memoir essay, A Diaspora in Blue. DANIELLA was written in white on the green chalkboard in the section reserved for the names of the misbehaved. It was 1989 and a late afternoon day in Mrs. Manny's kindergarten class. Her classroom was 2 rooms over from the side entrance of Werther Elementary, so very close to the blacktop playground where I used recess to daydream about flying cars in the future. At 5, I was precocious, packaged up in a big-eyed, ochre-colored bundle of curiosity and imagination, with waist-length, dark curly hair wrapped up in a braided ponytail and a crooked-toothed smile. Mrs. Manny wore purple eyeshadow that brought out the wrinkles around her eyes, highlighted by a hairsprayed dark bob that I imagine hadn't changed in nearly a generation. You could still smell the stale cigarette smoke through her floral perfume that wafted through the air whenever we left the classroom and she led us, her wide bottom swaying from left to right as we followed behind her in a straight line, like ducklings after their mama. As I looked at my board from the desk that day, I felt perplexed and frustrated. The different clusters of desks in the room all had little white girls and white boys with names like Kimberly and Emily and Sean, except for the 2 Black girls in my class, Anitra and Monica. They were part of a regional public school desegregation program, which launched in 1983, the same year I was born, as a condition of a federal lawsuit settlement. In that moment, my 5-year-old self was having an existential dilemma. "That's not me, Mrs. Manny," I blurted aloud. "You misspelled my name." I watched in what felt like slow motion as Mrs. Manny went back to her grading book to check how my name was spelled. She walked to the board, angrily erased the extra L, and added a check mark next to my name for speaking out of turn. I could feel the heat rising through my body as my brows furrowed in anger because of the unjust punishment. Then the warmth spread to my cheeks as I looked around the room. I was filled with shame and embarrassment for correcting my teacher. How am I wrong for being right? Am I bad? I wondered to myself. The world I was raised in was a radical departure from the one my Puerto Rican-born parents came from. In 1967, my parents left Brooklyn's mean streets for St. Louis. They later found themselves in suburban Baldwin, Missouri. Baldwin was the epitome of the idealized American dream. Middle class, quality public schools, and safe subdivision neighborhoods. The American dream was also white, very white. In the 1990s, about 22,000 people lived in Baldwin. 24 of them were Puerto Rican, which that meant my 6-person family made up a quarter of the Puerto Rican population. Blacks and Asians together made up just 1.4% of the population. While I didn't know these stats growing up, I knew no one else's parents spoke Spanish or came from a house that smelled as garlicky as mine or had a mom who wore tight jeans and high heels to every classroom party and parent-teacher conference. No one had a name like my own, even outside of Baldwin. For most of my childhood, we were the only Velázquez in all of St. Louis's yellow pages. People came from all over the world to learn English in St. Louis because of the natives' enviable, unaccented accent, a perfectly bland blend of American diction and enunciation. Growing up, I was obsessed with fitting in and trying to make my family follow, especially when it came to grammar. My mom moved from Puerto Rico to Brooklyn when she was 2, my dad when he was 12. Mom had a Nuyorican accent, while my dad sounded like he came from the island. Both talked in ways that embarrassed me. Conversations at home would go like this. "Mom, it's sandwich without a G." "That's what I said, sandwich." "I don't understand why you just can't say anything right." The list went on. Mango, not mongo. Vacuum, not vacuum. And the constant enforcement of no double negatives. Only later would I learn that double negatives are grammatically correct in Spanish. Thank you.
Everyone, please give it up by snapping it for Daniela Velázquez. And thank you so much, Daniela, for reminding us how important it is for us to make sure that they know our names and that they say and spell them correctly. Mad love, my friend. Coming up, y'all, to the stage, we have Rochaun Meadows-Fernandez. Rochaun is a Black woman who tries to process the world through writing. Her mediums change, but her passion for health, especially reproductive matters, remains. Please read her work in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, and a host of other publications. Thank you so much for giving it up for Rochaun Meadows-Fernandez.
Hi everyone, I'm Rochaun Meadows-Fernandez, and I'll be reading a piece from my personal essay, No Goodbyes. My mother raised me with the warning that you never allow a man to tell you that he doesn't want you twice. Through the years, her training would lead to waves of relief at the clarity of it's over and goodbye. But she never told me what to do if a partner teased out the words, tossing each letter towards me, one by one, yet never offering them in completion or clarity. The boy never said goodbye to me, and in turn, I had no idea when to leave. In the absence of goodbye, I heard something closer to sit and stay. I'd been classically conditioned to salivate like one of Pavlov's dogs, excitedly awaiting mealtime following the ring of a bell. I'd be back for you, he'd tell me without needing to worry that anything about me would shift in his absence. At each command, I'd find myself inching closer towards doghood. And before I knew it, I was just another dumb bitch who sat there waiting faithfully. And wait I did. Heaven knows how many hours I spent frozen in time, waiting for his return, hours that I will never get back. Most often I'd wait for him at the narrow creek that was situated halfway between our houses. When he'd make me wait too long, I'd make the journey myself to his world. Though the waters of time have long washed away my ability to envision the details of the spot, my lungs can still remember the suffocating feeling of being called across the water with a sense of urgent yearning. It's also possible that I never saw the water for myself. Most often, I felt my way through unknown perils in the dark. At that time in my life, my body was not a thing for preserving. It was a lifeless vessel with the sole mission of completing his demands. Crossing the creek was as much of a metaphorical shift as it was a literal one. On his side, the grass felt different beneath my feet, more supported, more assured, more nurtured, things I'd rarely felt otherwise. His mother's house was located on the outside edge of a semicircle and nestled in the center of a congregation of respectable houses. The property boundaries were generous. The lawns remained immaculate and trespasser-free, despite the lack of fences and lawn tools. I didn't understand who did the work to keep their neighborhood beautiful. Never saw it for myself. But then again, I was there often despite the invisible line of respectability that was meant to keep fast girls like me out in the unlikely event that his mother's detest wasn't enough to do the job. And they probably didn't see me either. Maybe they should have been like my side of the creek and had real fences. We had fences, albeit old, short, and tethered fences, doing what they could to protect the limited possessions of single mothers like mine, who were doing what they could to afford rent, utilities, and the happenings of their children's lives. I wish I could say I decided to invest in my mother's dreams for my life instead of this teenage boy's games, but I wanted instant gratification, and her expectations of me took too long to yield a return on investment. During these games, he would bend me any way he desired. I was an overthinker who suddenly lost the need to think. I did what I was told and the rest didn't matter. It's been a little over a decade, and I can't believe that I, a lifelong arachnophobe, made that journey through the darkness. If I could, I'd transport myself to the past and give warning to the dangerous game I was playing. You're not the only one, I'd say. Stop. By going to see him, you're risking being bitten by snakes in the water and in your bedroom. But it wasn't the risk of snakes, spiders, or sprained ankles and bones that should have kept me home. It was the reality that little Black girls in neighborhoods of poverty aren't safe in the streets, ever, especially not at nighttime. Between his comings and goings, I was there waiting, with eyes full of tears and a heart full of pain. There were many others who lurked, drunk on the unignorable aroma of my stupidity, servitude, and Black girlhood, watching and waiting for the chance to play games that I couldn't recover from as easily. Something about this arrangement pulled others towards me. It taught me that while fast Black girls are often seen as a threat to themselves, as well as the well-meaning, respectable boys around them, we're the real ones in danger. No one ever tells us that fast Black girls deserve greeting and consideration too. And one day, while I was waiting for my formula of goodbye, the demons of the night would get me in the daytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all give it up for Rochaun Meadows-Fernandez. Thank you for taking us through that journey. That line about snakes, fam? Damn, so many lines. Coming up to the mic, y'all, we have Erin Threatt. Erin is a Black storyteller who, after graduating from law school and becoming a member of the Louisiana State Bar, was a partner in a consulting business and practiced law in New Orleans. Y'all, give it up for Erin Threatt.
Hey y'all, my name is Erin. I will be reading an excerpt from my essay, Perspective. Once I left the safe space of home and family, racism let me know that the outside world didn't care about me. Iola Roberts Elementary School was my first stop in the place beyond my safe spaces. A fellow kindergartner, Amber, told me that she couldn't play with me anymore after I finally convinced her that I was Black and not a girl with a good tan. That same year, Miss Champion, the personification of a skinny vulture that was missing too many feathers, told the white students to sit in the front and the Black students to sit in the back of the school bus. In first grade, Miss Diffie made Ben, a chubby white boy with rosy cheeks, icy blue eyes, and all his baby teeth, apologize to me for talking loudly about niggas in class. Miss Diffie was a small, skittish woman with a rodent-like face. I'm sure that she only forced him to apologize because she didn't want to deal with the repercussions of me telling my mom, a teacher in our small school system, about the incident. Mama already had to handle the Miss Champion situation the previous school year by getting me moved to a different bus. One day, in Mrs. Thomas's second grade class, I was sitting at a desk behind Donnie, a skinny, blonde, snaggle-toothed boy with piss-colored eyes. I was the only Black girl in the class. We weren't friends, and we usually didn't talk much. I was an advanced reader, and I don't think his learning difference had been diagnosed yet. For some reason that day, we talked about the school that the majority of our classmates would attend the next year for third grade. You know, the neighborhood that school is in is Niggertown. My grandmother lives over there. Well, I guess she's a nigger. He smiled. The conversation ended. Before that day, I already knew he wasn't my friend. No love was lost. However, I didn't tell Mrs. Thomas about what he said because I didn't think she'd do anything to help the way I felt. That day wasn't the first time I heard Donnie say nigga. It was just the first time he said it to me. Maybe because I remembered that nothing happened the day Donnie loudly sang his version of Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, complete with the rhyming couplet of trigger and nigga. His Niggertown comment wouldn't draw much ire from Miss Thomas. Donnie's mom was a teacher at the high school in our small school system. Many of my early experiences with white people, especially white males, contributed to my schema about white folks in general. Their presence is not a safe space for me. I cannot be my full self around them. I've had to learn how to survive amongst them while also trying to figure out how to become my full self at the same damn time. I have never felt any shame about being Black. Being Black around white folks just wasn't and still isn't safe. As a child, I learned that I should just focus on survival and harm reduction when it comes to dealing with white people. Because she was so young when he died, Mama never really knew her father. Similarly, Ma never knew her father because he drowned in a creek while Mama Nellie, Ma's mother, was carrying her. Mama Nellie was a widow with 7 children when Ma was born. Early in Ma's childhood, Mama Nellie married Papa Eyes. When Ma became a widow, she chose to do life differently. She never talked about her life in her stepfather's home, but she let it be known that she chose to never have another man living in her home or as a father over her children. In the early 1950s, like now, Ma's decision to remain a Black, multi-job working single mother of 8 was risky and radically courageous. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Give it up, y'all, for Erin Threatt for coming through with a word. Thank you so much, Erin. Everyone, our last storyteller to perform tonight is Heather Stokes. Heather is a Norwalk, Connecticut-based writer who holds an associate's degree in general studies from the University of Bridgeport. When she is not saving the world, she takes care of her mother, niece, and adoptive sister. They, along with her colorful life experiences, provide the background for her writing. Please, y'all, join me in welcoming the exceptional, unforgettable Heather Stokes.
is Heather, and I will be reading an excerpt from my personal essay, Thief in the Night. A therapist once asked me what I thought addiction had stolen from my family. I'm sorry.
Don't be, you're good. Take your time.
I'm sorry. My piece just completely disappeared from me.
That's all good. Your bandwidth may be low, so what I'm going to ask everyone to do while Heather is bringing her piece back up is to disable your video. Disable your video. We can give Heather a little bit more bandwidth. Heather, take your time. We're with you, fam.
A therapist once asked me what I thought addiction had stolen from me and my family. The first thing that came to mind were the years my dad, brother, and uncle spent in prison leaving us alone. Years that robbed us of having a male presence in our family. Years that morphed into the I'll just do it myself attitude that haunts my relationships to this day. I thought about the shame that I felt as I walked past the neighborhood bodega, eyes fixed to the ground in an effort to avoid making eye contact with my brother, who stood outside shaking in the middle of a 3-day crack cocaine binge. But then I started to think about the silent losses, the things that are not talked about in the glamorization of addiction that is played out on your favorite TV shows. Like opening the kitchen cabinet to find the little corner ripped off of the aluminum foil roll. My Uncle Reese used them to construct his aspirin bottle crack pipes. Cut off straws that were useless to drink your Pepsi with made the perfect suction for inhaling poison. I would often find them discarded under the crabapple tree in front of our house. Some mornings, I would even find my uncle discarded there with them, his disheveled body wrapped around the tree, surrounded by rotten crab apples, as if the poison had seeped into them too. Addiction steals your innocence. One day, my mother and I returned to our apartment to find that my uncle had stolen all the meat out of our freezer to sell crack. Our nosy next-door neighbor leaned out of her second-floor window to describe in detail how she had watched him contort himself into a ball and squeeze through the tiny basement window. His drug buddy of the day stood as a lookout, nervously pacing in front of the door until my uncle emerged, arms overflowing with steaks, hamburger meat, and chicken. Then they both took off running down the street to offload their bounty to our unknowing neighbors. That food was meant to feed us for the rest of the month, would keep them high for the next few hours. My mother stood listening calmly, trying to figure out how she was going to replace a month's worth of food that she had spent the last of our food stamps on. I stood silently, giving my neighbor the side eye. Why didn't you do something? Why didn't you say something? I thought. She might as well have let them in the house herself. Addiction steals your trust. When my brother and Uncle Reese were not supporting their habits with our household items, they would beat other addicts to make their money. Beats were fake drugs that they sold by rolling up baking soda, aspirin, or whatever else they could find in the medicine cabinet in plastic and attempting to pass it off as crack. As you can imagine, it rarely went over well, and when the person who got beat found out, they would come knocking at our door. It was a common occurrence for my mother and I to be woken up by drug addicts in our backyard, banging on our door, threatening our life if they did not get their money back. They would eventually skulk away when threatened with a 911 call, but we always feared the next time we walked out the door, they would be waiting for us. So we would wait for the next knock and hope they didn't follow through on their threats that time. Addiction steals your sleep. My Uncle Reese died in 2010 while I was in the middle of serving a 4.5-year prison sentence after falling victim to an addiction of my own. He had transitioned from dope, or heroin as most of you may know it, to methadone at this point, or so we thought. His body had swollen to twice its size, inflamed from years of drug abuse, as if the drugs had made a home in his cells. Nicotine and crack cocaine had damaged his lungs and brought on COPD. His oxygen tank trailed behind him, trying to breathe new life into a body that he had spent his life trying to destroy, a body he ultimately did destroy. He had moved out of my mother's home into his efficiency apartment up the street a couple of years before. It was his first time living alone in his life. He was 48. A week before his 50th birthday, my Uncle Reese had a heart attack after taking a hit of crack alone in his apartment. I was unable to attend his funeral, and 10 years later, I still cannot bring myself to visit his grave. Addiction has stolen so many things from my family and me: money, food, sleep, trust, motherhood, celebrations. But the biggest thing addiction has ever stolen from me is the opportunity to see my uncle one last time. Addiction steals your goodbyes. Thank you.
Yo, if y'all don't give it up for Heather Stokes. I know everyone disabled their video, but please enable your video again so that Heather can see this love, yo. Heather, let me tell you something. I had no idea what piece you were going to read for this. As you know, I'm the daughter of a crack addict and the daughter of a crack epidemic. I'm also a felon. And so to hear you come through talking about addiction, particularly crack addiction, which people don't show love or compassion for, even though we have all of this love and compassion for the opioid epidemic, and to talk about being a felon, talk about being formerly incarcerated as a Black woman, your story is the most erased story. Whether we're talking about literary canon, whether we're talking about film or media, I am so glad that you pulled up at the rear and delivered that, because everybody here needed to hear that story. And I can't wait for you to get that story into the world. I got nothing but love, admiration, adoration, and respect for you, fam. You better come through, and everybody give it up again for Heather motherfucking Stokes, a survivor of all,
Heather.
of all of the things. Thank you so much.
Yes, Heather. Yes.
Thank y'all for coming through tonight, for listening to our 22 Roots, Wounds, Words storytellers perform the pieces that they penned over the last 10 weeks. Thank you all. Please let's give it up again for the performers that came after the break. Briyana D. Clarel, Yolande Clark Jackson, Celeste Chan, Australia-Fernandez, Camille Dantzler, Dominic Cinnamon Bradley, Tanya Abari, Daniela Velázquez, A. Rochaun Meadows-Fernandez, Erin 3, and Heather Stokes. Give it up. I'm gonna unmute y'all because I gotta hear y'all. I don't like this silent giving it up. Come on, give it up.
Yes.
Yes.
Read all y'all stuff. All y'all stuff. So you got to get busy. Too. Got to get busy. I'm ready to read all of it. So come on, come on.
Better come on now, all of it. Mad gratitude to you all for coming through and spending 2.5 hours with us. We do have an anthology that is coming out. Every performer that performed and gave you their work, their offerings this afternoon/evening will be in that anthology. We will share that information with you in the coming weeks or months. But everyone, please have a wonderful, blessed Sunday evening. We shall see you soon. Mad love.
And thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Daniela.
Yes, thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole.
Chanel.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Chanel.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Love you, everyone. Wow. Lay down. New teacher.